Davis, you have a comment?
Hello?
Who's the comment?
Yeah, could I ask a question?
Yes.
I think it's the referee's position is fine. It's a very important issue. I think I saw John McCarthy there. Would it be possible to get his testimonial as a professional expert?
Yes, I don't have any.
I'm not going to object to that.
Mr. McCarthy, would you be willing to testify during this case?
Sure.
All right. Would you mind coming forward, please? Are we ready to go with the video? Okay.
Yes.
Guys, we're gonna put on a video real quick, okay?
Need for another review? Anybody know? Okay. Jekyll?
Mr. Davis, I think
Mr. Davis had a question, sure.
about Mr. McCarthy.
Yeah, but we can't. Chris, can you set it up because we can't communicate with Mr. Davies appropriately, so
Yes.
you're our conduit to this communication, so.
We're just going to make his picture. Okay, Mr. Davis. Mr. McCarthy is here. He's already previously been sworn in, and you can ask him questions, and I'm going to have follow-up questions after that. And I think I'll have Mr. McCarthy walk through the video to explain what's going on, if that's okay.
We'll give it to the individual requesting Mr. McCarthy's testimony so we can go.
Right. Yeah, Mr. Davis, this is your opportunity to ask Mr. McCarthy questions.
Can I ask?
Yes.
They've talked about the opponent tapping and how many times the opponent taps. Is that relevant?
If you ask me if it's relevant, how many times the opponent taps, as a referee, I tell the opponents in the back, look, if you're especially in this position, because many times as the fighter, you're not going to know, you're going to feel this slight tap, and I'll tell them, if you start to feel a slight tap in your shoe, you hold that until I tell you to stop, and when I tell you to stop and I am breaking the hold, you let go of it. So in this position, it can be that way. I do tell them, if that person is tapping hard on top of you and everybody can see it, let go of the hold. That is what a sportsman in our sport does.
Okay. So the fighter should only stop when the referee intervenes, correct?
No, it's not that just the referee intervenes. There can be that point that yes, if we're not sure, if the fighter isn't sure, and in this position where Rousimar is with Jake in this hold, which is a Kimura, there can be some doubt about, that small tap underneath him and stuff because he's not seeing it. But in many situations, we want the fighter to stop when they see a tap and they know it's a tap by their opponent. We want them to let go of the hold. The fight's over.
Where should the referee be standing when the fighters are in this position as in this fight?
In this hold, what we have is we have a Kimura when it's a topside Kimura with Rousimar having his what we call cross body on top of Jake. In this position, mechanically, the referee, understanding the position, has to bring themselves over to the side of the hold. You'll see that Jake's arm is being put into a position where it's starting to rotate backwards. And as the referee, mechanically, I want to bring myself to that side, but I have to at least be in a position where I'm looking at the hold and I can also see the offhand for a tap, so I know if that fighter does decide to tap, I'm going to come in and that gives me the ability to block the hold and to actually start to put pressure against what is occurring so there can be no added pressure once that tap has occurred. I'm going to be stopping it, breaking it, and putting reverse pressure on the hold.
Okay, where would you have been standing at this moment?
Mechanically, we want a referee to stand. If we can bring up the video, I'd be able to show you exactly where is the place that we want someone to. Sometimes mechanically we can't do exactly what we want to do because of the position of the fighters against the cage or things like that, but we try to be towards the head side of Jake's shields. In between the head of Jake and Rousimar when they're in that position, because that's what's going to allow me to see the tap on the one side and to be able to stop and break the hold of the Kimura on the other.
In your professional opinion, if the referee had been in front, would you have made his stoppage more clear and easier for Rousimar to see?
I can't say what Rousimar is going to be able to see or know. I know that if the referee was on the other side, what we're trying to do and what our job is to protect the fighter who at that moment can no longer protect themselves. My job is to make sure that they are not going to be injured by somebody who is holding on to something longer than it should be held.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
So what I'm going to ask Mr. McCarthy to do is just take the last couple seconds of this fight, break it down for us, and explain, and I want him to focus on how the cranking of his submission is what he's concerned with when the fighter can't defend himself anymore, and the point at which the referee ends the contest, and you see the crank, and you see the extension and the effect of that. Okay, so you can, John, tell me when you want me to pause it.
Okay. Stop the hold, we're going to stop it. This is what we're talking about cross body as far as Rousimar is on top of Jake. Jake at this point knows he's in trouble. He's got a real problem. He's got a 2-on-1 when we're talking about either a double wrist lock or a Kimura is what we say in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It is a shoulder lock, and it's putting pressure on the shoulder, but the real emphasis of where the problem will begin to show is it does a twisting on the humerus, and the humerus starts to get, and what will happen is he'll get a spiral fracture of his upper arm. So at this point, Jake, you can see with his hand, he's almost put it in, I'm not gonna let this go too far, I know I'm in trouble. And as a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I've been in this hold too many times. I've done this hold to a lot of people, and I know as I'm applying pressure, it's different in a fight, but I'll apply pressure slowly to let them know, hey, I've got you. And it's gonna get to a point where they realize, I can't take any more, and they're gonna tap. In fighting, I'm gonna start to crank it hard. I'm gonna crank it as hard as I can until that moment that I know that my opponent has given up. And at that point, my job is not to injure my opponent, my job is to win the fight. You saw the taps, and you see Steve is now on top of him. And even at this point, look at where Jake's arm is at as it's coming back. All right, and there's a lot of torque and there's a lot of pressure on his shoulder, but that upper arm is starting to, that bone, that humerus is starting to actually rotate and spirally twist. Watch how far the hand goes now, because you've already had 3 taps.
And the taps aren't anywhere near
They're not near his back.
Jake's legs, where were knees.
But positionally right here when we're talking, this is what Mr. Davis asked. I want to be right where Rousimar's right leg is at. That's where I'm going to position myself, basically. I want to be on a side where I can see the hand as it taps.
On the others.
I want to be right here on where Rousimar's right leg is at. Because I want to come down and I'm going to take, and you're going to see my left hand is going to go on Rousimar's elbow, and my right hand is going to go towards where he's holding Jake's hand, because I'm going to start to reverse the hold as far as the pressure, so he can't be torqued any farther. But watch how far the hand comes. The one thing that I'll say out of this hold is from the moment that Jake first taps until the point is let go, that hold rotates about 14 inches or so. That's a long ways. It's a long ways when you're that person that's got that hold on. You know, I'm not saying that Rousimar meant to purposely hurt Jake, but he, as a jiu-jitsu stylist, as an MMA fighter, is no different than me or anybody else. He knows when the tap occurs. It's saying that I am submitting to you, you've caught me, you win. And we let go because we're there to win a match, win a fight, whatever it's going to be, but we're not there to permanently injure somebody. And this can start to permanently injure people when you hold on to things or continue to crank them past that point when they said, I've submitted.
Mr. Davies, do you have any further questions of Mr. McCarthy?
Are you asking me? I didn't get that?
Chris?
Yes, do you have any further questions of John McCarthy?
No, thank you.
Are there any questions of the commissioners of Mr. McCarthy?
Mr. McCarthy, very briefly, based upon your background and experience, do you believe that Mr. Palhares engaged in unsportsmanlike conduct given what you've seen?
I will tell you this. I believe Rousimar is a nice person. I believe he's a good person. I believe there's a disconnect somewhere between what he's interpreting as what he needs to do to stop the fight and what everyone else looks at. When you crank that submission as much as he is after the tap, it's a disregard for the safety of your opponent, and it's unsportsmanlike.
And very briefly describe the potential consequences that could befall an athlete in Jake Shields' position in this type of a hold or any other type of a hold as to the type of damage that they may sustain in the event that the hold is held too long.
Well, in this type of a hold, there's several things that can occur. The elbow can actually have problems as far as the torque that's put on it. The shoulder can actually have the separation and the tearing of the labrum. But the real thing that usually occurs off of this specific hold is we get a break of the upper arm. There's a spiral fracture that occurs. It's not a nice break. It usually requires surgery to put the break back in place the right way. It's a serious injury.
Okay. And this particular hold then, what was impacted was the shoulder and the arm. There are other holds though that impact other body parts, and particularly you could put an athlete in a rear naked choke. Is that right?
Yes, you could.
All right. If you hold crank on that one too long, what's the consequence of that?
When it comes to chokes, the real consequence is it's going to put the person unconscious. As far as lasting effects with it, as long as the referee pulls them off, they're going to be fine. It's going to take a long time to have any type of permanent injury that was held on, and it would never happen in MMA in that fashion. But when you're talking about joint locks, which is what this is a Kimura. You got the same thing with a straight arm bar, you got the same thing with a knee bar or a heel hook. When you're getting into joint locks, there's almost an unwritten code within MMA. Most fighters now do not want to tap to punches or strikes. They're going to put the weight on the referee to stop the fight. But the tap is put there in place for the fighters to be safe. And every fighter out there will tell you they will tap when put into a joint lock such as this, because there comes that point where they know they're not getting out. And it's for the safety of the fighter that that tap means something and that the hold is released.
And so I guess that if we were going to put this on a progression, then what you're discussing is that a joint lock is far more potentially damaging to a fighter than a rear naked choke than with an asphyxiation. Or
Yes.
Submitting an athlete then to be unconscious.
Yeah, and people are afraid of chokes. I've been choked out too many times to say, I do that say a twitch, I'm just kidding, and nothing happens off of it. But, people worry about it. It's absolutely the safest thing that can occur in an MMA fight to a fighter, because they're gonna go unconscious, and they're gonna come back, and they're gonna be fine. This can actually injure you to the point where sometimes it can be permanent injury, where you never walk the same, or you're not able to use that arm in the same fashion.
Thank you. I'm not no further questions for this witness.
Yes, I have one question, if I may, Chairman.
Sure. Thank you.
John, in your experience, you've stated you've refereed over 1,000 fights. Thereabouts, you're really not sure. So would you, Mr. McCarthy, please explain to us if this is a common practice where fighters typically extend a submission, or is it an anomaly? Is it something you see on a regular basis, or is it rarely, is it something you rarely see, or is it somewhere in the middle?
I would tell you that through my career, this is something, it has happened, but it is not the norm. It is absolutely an anomaly. We don't have fighters. There's a certain respect that goes with doing the sport. Fighters walk into MMA understanding that there is a risk. They understand that there's a possibility that they could be damaged and hurt during the fight, and they're okay with that when the fight is in the midst of them trying to compete. But once they have tapped out, once they have given up, once they have said, I can take no more, they expect their opponent to stop. That's almost an unwritten rule, because that's what keeps them safe. I have seen it in the past. I tell fighters in the back when I'm talking to them as far as sportsmanlike conduct, I tell them, look, I do not care if they have any pass with their opponent. I don't care if they have heat. If I tell them to stop, if their opponent taps out, and I go to break that hold, and you decide that you want to hold on to it, I tell them, you're not going to like the way I break it, and I promise you, you can be standing above your opponent. He could be unconscious. He could have a damaged limb, and you will be the loser. I will disqualify you from the fight. Do not embarrass the sport. Do not embarrass the commission.
Thank you, sir.
So, Mr. Davis,